Hey, what's up, Tater Gang? I really wanted to launch into this whole historical chronology of Black and East Asian culture, intersection in cinema, and homage paid in these intersections in Shang Chi, and I will, but the movie definitely hit on a lot of subjects I'm currently struggling with that really just elevated the experience for me. I struggle with identity, legacy, and expectation, and I'm always pushing the boundaries on who I want to be to my family and the role I want to serve in it. Naturally, continuing to move upward and mature is a healthy desire, and especially when transitioning from a long time commitment from a certain path into one that just makes me happier. Recently, I was rejected for an apprenticeship for a company that was quite reputable in the pop culture world. And after waiting almost a month to hear back, and only to be told that I will not be joining this program, I'm not gonna lie, it fucking stung, but I also appreciate that they took the time to respond, I guess. But as I watched Simu Liu and Aquafina defend what makes you happy, even if it isn't what's typically expected with the time you have, just really hit different. And I just wanted to thank you all for being as supportive as you've been as I learned to not be afraid of doing what I love, which is getting better at making content celebrating cinema with you. So, thank you. All right, but enough of the mushy stuff. We gotta get back to the video, but see you soon. Hello there! What is good, Tater Gang? So, Shang Chi. I've gotta say, this movie was almost worth the contagion risk. Mask up for this one, boys, girls, neighbors, enbies, and siblings, or see you in October when it hits Disney Plus, because spoilers ahead. It is not a secret, I love martial art films. I also really love research, and I'm going to try to give my best cinephile rundown of the evolution of the relationship hip-hop and kung fu cinema, these titans of pop culture, have with one another. A bit of DOS Fox to add lens to the way in which my eyes inhaled this film like a Miyake pig. Not gonna lie, some of the quotes that I'm about to say are a bit cringy to me, so I may use poetic license to avoid wrinkles. Sources down below, you know where, and the description's where. Let's get started. No. Five Fingers of Death, released in March of 1973, was the first kung fu film to be released by a mainstream US distributor. I warned you guys. I warned you. But the intentions are good. In the 1970s, Bruce Lee was a rare non-white leading man, and an unfeasibly cool one at that. His completed films paint a picture of a world in which oppression from criminal organizations or drug lords, Japanese imperialists, or government, or cat executing pseudo-Bond villains, or the KKK, were defeated with hyperkinetic ultraviolence. Excuse me, straight here. This theme of self-reliance appealed to Black audiences who were emerging from the civil rights struggles and were still subject to plenty of prejudice. Martial arts films, like blaxploitation films, were adrenaline-drunk revenge fantasies. These two genres would cross paths in cult classics like The Last Dragon, a 1985 hit by Berry Gordy. In 1973, they would pique interest to Americans of all kinds. Martial art films benefited from a shift in the emphasis of the Black Power movement, which supported global solidarity between all peoples suffering racial oppression. Kung fu films had gotten ballet-ic. Some experts on the genre believe that this was due to audience affluency, the rich and beige. Since the 1970s, The Man with the Iron Fist, or more recently, The Raid, an Indonesian release, remind us that the genres... I refuse to call this genre trashy. So we're going to use unreconstituted heart is never too far and likely still beating, and led to the cultural gems as such is the following. In the 1960s through the 70s, there were roughly 50 Chinatown cinemas in the United States. The Chinatown circuit in New York included the Pagoda Theater and the Music Palace. There were also Chinatown theaters in Chicago, San Francisco, and Boston, per Grady Hendrix, expert on the subject. 1973 was considered the golden year of Kung Fu cinema. The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, would come to U.S. audiences in April and September of 1973, almost 2 years after their initial release in 1971 and 1972. Bruce Lee had become extremely visible in his role as Kato in The Green Hornet in the mid-1960s, but it was really these two films that were what catapulted him into stardom. He had a star power, and he was a great self-promoter. He had real charisma, and he could do U.S. publicity because he spoke English. Feels weird. Feels weird having to clarify that. African Americans saw martial arts as a means to both self-defense and self-improvement. What's more, blaxploitation films were criticized by the black community for their negative depictions of African Americans, and some of the films were described as racist towards the beige. Martial arts films were poorly dubbed, voice talent rarely receiving scripts, so more often than not they would just make up words that would fit the mouthing, resulting in meme-like chaos. There was a ton of racism targeted towards both Asians and black communities at the time, so quality of voice talent wasn't remotely a priority for US distributors targeting non-white audiences. It was, by every definition of the sense, a fly-by-night business. Cool fact, the boys were definitely studying the films and style to better incorporate it into dance. If you have time, go check out the Netflix original series, The Get Down. It has recently been added back to the US-facing Netflix dashboard roster. I don't know what algorithm? I don't know. But it is now available for US audiences to consume, so please go check it out. It is fantastic. The score is gorgeous. Just go do it. Martial artists would often watch the films in pairs to more efficiently note-take on leg and arm work. They wanted to know how... You know what? Why did they talk like this during this documentary? They wanted to know how the Chinese did Kung Fu. Okay, you good? Consider yourself schooled.
Alright, fool. Consider yourself schooled.
Now we're jumping into the Shang Chi portion of this video. A few things. I think we can all agree that the best hand-to-hand fight scene was too early. And we got too much of it in the trailer too. As someone who followed the teams that orchestrated the choreography for this film rather intimately, seriously y'all, go follow their Instagram. The work they do is incredible. I feel like we could have paced the choreography better. The bus sequence, while delicious, was a bit heavy-handed in comparison to the match against Shang-Chi's sister, the Death Dealer, and honestly, we could have got some of that time invested into the delight of Wong just being the shit. He was just, that was the shit, frankly. And it felt like the only genuinely kung fu fight scene in the film, down to the execution choice to shoot in San Francisco. Fun fact, the birthplace of Bruce Lee. Another fun fact, Bruce Lee and I's birthdays are 48 hours apart, making him also a Sagittarius. Squirrel! So, I'm not going to develop on how the film fits into the MCU and its placement within the multiverse. There are better, smarter, more wrinkly brain channels I can recommend for commentary on the world building of Shang Chi. Leave a comment with your favorite. I'd be happy to check them out. I'll be sure to link my favorites, you know where, in the description square. But it would be criminal to not acknowledge the non-humanoid beings of this world. Yes, you know it's coming. I'm about to gush over Maurice.
Hey, phrasing!
Yep. If you know a little bit about East Asian folklore, the design of the wildlife in Talo pays homage to a few mythical creatures, including my favorite, the nine-tailed fox. Not the Pokemon. Seriously, go Google Kumaho Korean folklore. Now, just go, like Pokemon Go. It's absolutely dungeon. You won't regret it. Trevor Slattery and Maurice are some of my favorite elements of this film. The silliness of it all really adds dimension to the film in a way that didn't, one, rely on Aquafina the entire time, and two, helped establish the cruelty that Shang-Chi's father is capable of. The Great Protector, that dragon was fucking gorgeous. Flying Dementor bats, Dweller in Darkness, a herd of Longma, just a ton of creature features, which, as a horror fan, we love our four-legged fiends. I think it's safe to say that on behalf of my shared demographic. So, the only question I think I haven't answered is this a kung fu movie? No, it's not. But in spirit, yes. You see, the MCU will always have its formula that keeps it strictly in its own lane as family entertainment. And in my opinion, it is both not dark or campy enough, but at the end of the day, there's a brand to maintain. And I'd be really foolish to expect any kind of one-inch punch that would crush your chest or anything flawless victory adjacent from Disney. But I was impressed with the commitment of the cast to this film. While Disney leadership considered it a fun experiment, the cast never doubted for a second the impact or vastly immersive nature Shang-Chi could add to the MCU. The world felt huge, and to quote David Callum, screenwriter for Shang-Chi, who honestly summarized this visual delight much better than I could. A lot of Asian cultures, there's this idea of piety and pleasing your parents and living to their expectation, and the way that might be different for a male child versus a female child. Very character-driven, empathetic stories. We didn't attempt to write in stuff we heard other Asian American people tell us to put in because that didn't feel true to us. When we started the casting process and when we started having more crew members, we did ask Simu and Nora, what is your experience as an Asian American? Have you experienced racism? And then we'd incorporate those types of ideas into their characters. This all feels very real world. They drink with their friends, they get drunk, they do karaoke, and then suddenly we knew there had to be an incredible impact for the moment of reveal that Shang is capable of this physical thing that is borderline superhuman. See, I couldn't have done that. He put all the stank on it. But that is it. You lovely, organic, oxygen-dependent humanoids. We have again reached safety. If you made it this far, go ahead and subscribe for more content like this and ring my bell. Ring the bell. Ring a bell. There's a bell. You should ring it. I am Goshji, and it was an absolute pleasure, as always, fangirling with you. I look forward to seeing you in the future, and until then, good night. Later, gang. Five-finger death punch.